Alrighty, welcome everyone to the after lunch talk. Come on down, you're the next contestant to poorly manage your session state. There is a sing-along.
There is a sing-along.
Just to make everyone aware. So, I'm Shawn Wallis. I'm currently the head of offensive security over at Caesars. I'm from San Francisco area. Just this is my third time speaking at SAINTCON, so thanks for having me. I love the engagement here. So,
yeah, Danny, I do lots of things, and the stuff I'm doing currently is the employer doesn't want me to tell you about. So, but if you want to know more, talk tomorrow. End of day.
Alrighty, standard disclaimer, these are our own opinions, not of any of our past, current, or future employers. Take us away.
That me already?
No, it's...
Oh, we're singing. Yes, okay. So we'll give you one chance to hear the jingle and then try and sing along with it.
This is our kind of attack and presentation life cycle. Alrighty, so really the goal of our talk is we're trying to level up people here at this talk, right? We're talking about red, purple, blue, kind of the whole spectrum. We're going to go through some things you may know, but guarantee everyone's going to walk away with something you didn't know or a thought you didn't think about, something of that nature. We're also trying to emphasize how easy it is to do these things. We're not going to be busting out very complicated tools. We don't use Burp Suite or anything of that. We try to stay away from, hey, it really is simple, really just knock it out. So, over to Danny.
Yeah, so when we start talking about sessions and web sessions and all that stuff, this is pretty much like the flow of how you deal with single sign-on stuff. And I'm not super interested in understanding the flow here, there, step A, B, C, D, all that stuff. But the real thing that I kind of want to emphasize there is when a web browser is authenticating to a web app using single sign-on stuff, it's going to interact with the IDP. It's going to then get the authorization from the IDP and then send that over to the web app itself. The web app never actually talks to the IDP in that process whatsoever. And so pretty much once the IDP says, yep, they're authorized, here's the authorization token, hand that over to the web app itself, you can do all that. So that exchange between the browser and the actual web app or SaaS app itself, that's one of the key things of, you want to steal the data coming off of that. And so that's pretty much kind of what I'm trying to say with kind of this slide.
The other thing, I like to call out is once your IDP finishes that authentication, they never talk again. It's just, thanks and move on. Now you're talking directly to that SaaS site and it's handling all of that session state now.
So to me, that's the stuff that you really want to steal and is actually more interested in from an attacker's standpoint. The video off of the slides.
Yeah.
The presenter video, because content heavy slide, right?
Alrighty, so we'll talk quickly about why our bad actors may do this. Financial gain ransomware, right? Why are they going to attack SaaS sites? They're looking for ways to get into systems. Hey, can I ransom your whole? Can I use tools to ransom your whole environment? I may know something about that. Right? Data theft, they're also going after company data, intellectual property, right? Your customer data, your employee data. These are all things of you got to kind of consider what are these SaaS applications giving access to, and then your backdoor access. This is kind of like the target reach, right? Hey, they got in through an HVAC, now they can come in through that. You have to consider, what are all my third parties doing? What do they have access to?
Ready to sing, Mike?
So we did have a bit of a competition with our other neighbors here of who was louder. So make sure yeah, we get in on the singing.
Failing so far. Oh, this is my site. It has my name on it. Sweet. Cool. So kind of some of the reconnaissance of when I'm trying to look for things that are using kind of this single sign-on SaaS kind of base stuff is I'm looking at a lot of public data, certificate transparency logs. And like for those who aren't aware, like whenever you're creating a TLS cert through Let's Encrypt or something like that, all of those logs of the certificates that are generated get published out to the world for anyone really to see. So you can start seeing as people are standing up this kind of infrastructure. So if I'm looking to potentially attack an organization, like what kind of, IDP are they potentially using? Are they using Okta? Are they using something else? I'm going to look for things like TLS certs being issued for company A at .okta.com, looking for anything like that. In addition to certificate transparency things, you can do lots of passive DNS, a lot of passive DNS providers out there. So those are some of the ones that we like. I'm Silent Push, but because they've been doing a lot of really cool stuff lately. But they're listening to like basically all DNS that's going across the internet and aggregating it out. So then you can, again, start searching through those kind of logs to try and target some of these kind of services.
What I like to do, kind of from that enumeration side, is a lot of companies, in this case, I kind of use Zoom, but if you pick out any of your SaaS sites, they tend to brand that title, right? So it could be, I put some examples here, right, of NFL.zoom.us or something of that nature. You can either do this with DNS, although a lot of them now have moved to doing something with Anycast, so they respond to anything. But as you can see with the pictures here, they're kind of showing that they still have branding up. So you know that they're customers of these if you want to figure out what they're using. But I think I pulled down like a Fortune 1000 list and just pulled all the domains out for each of the Fortune 1000 companies and just did a for loop, right, against DNS and came up with a list of popular SaaS sites. And I was able to figure this out in 20 minutes or whatever. So
I had an interesting story about that. Literally yesterday, I had a coworker ping me and goes, "Hey, I had a weird LinkedIn thing happen to me." It's some sales guy at some company reached out and said, "Hey, I see that your company is looking into new products in this space that I sell. Can you point me in the right direction?" And we're like, "Yes, we are actually looking at those." And I am speculating that they saw the infrastructure stand up for us POVing their competitor. And so like, yay, that was fun. I'm like, that's a good way to get blacklisted from us ever talking to you ever again.
Yep.
But yeah, those kind of techniques are all kind of the same thing.
Cool. So if you're in the purple team or blue team, log reviews are a really good way. I love looking through, the next-gen firewall logs or your proxy logs. You'll see all those SaaS sites that people are going to. You can sort them by usage, right? You start to get kind of the sense of what's being used. But you could have just also asked the IAM team. So, it's just, they're actually quite friendly. Just, hey, can you show me everything that Okta is using or whatever, right? And they can produce a list for you, and you can start to kind of threat model on that, which is our next topic here. So, when you have this list now of all those SaaS sites, you're looking for those high-value targets. You're looking for things that, hey, yes, things like AWS, Salesforce, Terraform, right? Things that will have access to all these systems, or if you attack them, then I could pull ransom down on anything. Or those ones that have high value target for data, right? Your Salesforce, ServiceNow, Slack, right? Any of those things. So you're also kind of looking at, well, do I have controls that allow SaaS sites already in place? You can deploy those both on the IDP and you can deploy those on the application themselves. You can start to understand, well, if some of those are controls in place, right, you start to narrow down the threat model as well. What do I need to look at? What do I need to focus on?
Ready?
All righty. So as we start talking about our session cookies here, we essentially are talking about the two sets of cookies, our session cookies and our persistent cookies. So session cookies are intended to only last as long as the session is in the browser, whereas your persistent cookies are going to last throughout. They're going to be stored on disk and whatnot. Session cookies should only be stored in memory. So they're all vulnerable kind of to the same thing. Your info stealers, your attacker in the middle, your system compromise will kind of go through those. The session cookies, I say, should have the session flag noted. We've run across a lot of cases where they don't, which is pretty interesting and just leads to complications, right? Persistent cookies don't have that. That's why they persist, right? I went through an experience of upgrading my Mac recently, and it's just all those cookies get moved over, and it's just amazing. Like, oh yeah, everything just started to work, right? That's because of those persistent cookies. So, think about what are those systems that you access that probably have high data that you never have to go through that login process for because it just knows. And that's where you start to become to this worrisome, oh wow, I have access to these things. So session cookies are ideally on financial systems, your IT systems, your InfoSec systems, anything that's high value target should have a session cookie. I find it funny, like, the banks make a big deal out of it. Oh, save your, username. I'm like, oh, that's saving me a lot of time, but that's getting stored in that persistent cookie then. Things like Slack, Confluence, Jira, never have to log into those, right? And there's been plenty, I think Dizzy just had a breach, right, with Slack again, where a lot of the data from there was able to be used. So think about that of what's stored in those systems that may be valuable to an attacker. So a very simple way, just how to view cookies in developer tools, right? Just go developer tools, application cookies. You'll see them right here. This is an example for CrowdStrike. I like using an extension to do this. Cookie editor is the one I usually use. And it just makes it easy to import, export. We'll show kind of a demo of that later and how easy that is to use. That's kind of the point, right, of it's 2 clicks, right, to get your cookies out versus knowing a ton of math on how to do this. This is just an example. The one on the left here is your memory cookies. So you see there's 7. And then when we look at the database on disk, there's only 3. So you can see, 4 of those are labeled as session, and those 3 that exist are here. We'll go over a little more detail of this in a couple of slides. And here we go again.
It's so good.
Thank you.
Shawn got all of that done. I did none of that. So
Credit goes to my daughter, actually, for doing the animation. But
so we were trying to talk about kind of the weird and like not so official history of like credential theft and like stealing passwords and cookies, and like good luck actually finding something out there that's like definitive. So we tried to like throw a bunch of stuff on here to kind of see just kind of what it looked like and pick out some of the bigger events that we could see. Phishing coined in 95. Zeus was a big one that's still, we're feeling the ramifications of that even today. Malware that was developed and then source code was put out, and then billions and billions and billions of derivatives, and everybody was using that source code. You got into more advanced stuff. I was around during like all the Firesheep stuff, which was tons of fun. Essentially what that was cookies being passed over unencrypted HTTP, and people on Wi-Fi going, oh, I shall take that cookie now. Thank you very much. I'm going to log into your Facebook account. Fish kits, again, we were trying to figure out how far back like actual fish kits are. And for those who don't know, or in the malware space, it's essentially like a zip file that's pre-compiled fish site. You just drop a zip on a compromised web server, unzip it, point everybody to it, and then all of a sudden you're phishing credentials. 2011-ish was when we kind of saw the first references to that term. Team Cymru had a blog post that they said they were collecting fish kits all the way back in 2011, stuff like that. And then you get all the way into kind of where we're at now is a lot of the Evil Engine X stuff, which is really spurred on by a lot of the MFA bypasses. everybody knows what that tool is just kind of because of that. And essentially it's, bypassing MFA because it's stealing your cookies. You're not actually going through any kind of authentication procedure. And generally lots of things, if you have a valid cookie, they don't care where you're coming from, country, IP, anything like that. It's already been a validated session. So there's a lot of work being done right now in the industry and in various different vendors on detecting this kind of stuff. But it's still very much a legitimate attack vector. And I think I saw a blog, SecureWorks, a little bit ago. I think they said 70% of all ransomware compromises came from like this kind of info stealer and or attacker in the middle proxy kind of stuff. So super, super prevalent. Really, really basic examples, just because we need pictures, but these are some credential phishing fish kits that you essentially, like I said, just a zip file, you drop onto compromised infrastructure, start pointing people at it. And most of the time you enter credentials into it and it'll email them out to the attacker. In some cases, they actually just write it to disk. And when you have open directories enabled on that web server, you can start getting all of the phished passwords, which is lots of fun. I may or may not have done that a couple of times. But yeah, so talked about it a little bit earlier, but kind of some of the info stealer stuff. I think this is one of those things that I don't think a lot of people necessarily talked about as much as they should have. And it's becoming more prevalent with this cookie theft kind of stuff. But just the devastation that can happen, just a really basic info stealer is really crazy. Just because it's so low tech. Like if you write an info stealer, it's not that much more work. Like it's way less work than something more exotic or sexy or stuff like that. But and you're seeing all the big off-the-shelf info stealers that you can buy or get anywhere. Like the big component of them is to steal all of these cookies and credentials stored in the browser and using all of those. And so you can kind of see that. I have some examples. I don't know how well they're showing up here. But there's whole marketplaces that are selling this data that are coming out of info stealers, and they're doing the legwork to actually go through the data that's coming out of those credential stealers to tell you what sessions to what services does this actually have access to. So then you can start potentially as an attacker buying access to very specific services that are active and valid because they're current active sessions that may or may not have been timed out yet. So super cool, super, I think it's super interesting, but.
I'm kind of circling back to the persistent cookies. You just acquire the cookie file. Actually, it's the next slide has the locations, but you then need to extract it out of the database, which is SQLite, and then you will have to decrypt it as well. There's plenty of tools to do that, but this is just demonstrating how easy it is. Just pull the file out. I recommend you all just give this a try. It's very simple.
Yeah, just a SQLite database.
Yeah, and that way you'll kind of understand of like, well, if an attacker were to do this, this is how they would go through that same process. All righty.
Oh, before you do that, all the major C2 stuff, that's all built in. Like they do all that, out of the box. So.
And we're moving on.
Almost the top of it all.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about some of our application security controls. And this is where I think it gets exciting for me and kind of a red teamer, right? Coming in about how, what should I be testing? What can I do? So
he nerds out about it.
So yeah, we talked about the session cookie plenty. So we've heard this in one of the other talks as well. There's an idle timeout and absolute timeout, right? The idle timeout is how long has your session been idle? And I'll kick you out after that. The absolute is, okay, well, how long? Well, I'll let you log in for a day and that's it, right? Keep alive protection. Well, that's important because you can defeat that idle timeout using keep alive. So your application is able to detect that or understand that that's not real data that is a very good thing and will not be prone to some of those methods. Being able to revoke the session. Well, what happens if in certain conditions, we'll go over a couple of examples of that, but what happens in these conditions? Does the session cookie actually get terminated like it should, or does it not? IP restrictions, we talked about, you can put those both on the IDP, but you also should put those on the application, because if you do a passive cookie attack or something, well, the IDP isn't even in the equation anymore. It's the application that matters, and a lot of people just stop at thinking that the IDP told them everything was secure. So why do I need to do anything more on the application? Simultaneous session login. Why do I have somebody logged in twice, right? Should at least notify or kick the other person out. Or system integrity. Am I the same network system browser? In the talk yesterday, they talked about, I think it was cross-system browser detection from Chrome, right? Of doing similar things like that, or a lot of some applications have this built in where they're able to detect that themselves. So for our example, I call this the working example. I use box.com, right? And the two methods I did is just like a file close, and yeah, that cookie was revoked. Had to log back in when I went to the site again. Second example, I just did X on the either upper right or the upper left on a Mac, whatever, right? And of course, the cookie was revoked again. But then I go over to CrowdStrike. And I should just note, I'm not throwing shade at CrowdStrike. I did all this testing before, the incident happened. So it just happens to be a good example that I wanted to keep. But when I do file close, that cookie's revoked. But when I X out, that cookie is not revoked. I'm like, what's going on here, right? So that cookie is going to stay valid up to their 1 hour idle timeout. So, an attacker could steal that cookie and, you as a user think, hey, I logged out, right? I closed my browser, I closed my session, but no, you didn't. So, it's just small things like this is all an attacker needs, right? Is to be able to, understand that I just need to steal that cookie in that race condition, that time window, and now I have access to CrowdStrike and think of what I can do with that. So this is an example of that cookie from CrowdStrike. You can see the ID cookie is the session cookie we're talking about. You'll notice over here on the expiry, it should say session, and it does not, right? So it is now a persistent cookie instead of that, meaning it persists when you close the session out. So the application, when you did file close, terminated it, but it didn't do that when I closed the window out. So this is something that I have been in touch with them to fix, and they have said is working as intended. Don't we love to hear that? So, but yeah, there's more, right? So I talked about the keep alive. So using any of these web extensions, right? You just click on them and they keep that session open. I think I stopped testing after 7 days. There is no absolute timeout for CrowdStrike that I am aware of. Maybe it's 8 days, but and again, same result, not a security flaw, working as intended. So, now we kind of think about this, well, if an attacker was able to steal that cookie, CrowdStrike's a high value system. They can get access and run commands on every endpoint it manages. There is a real-time response thing that you can enable that requires MFA. So props for them for doing that. I am not sure how many people are aware of that or have that enabled. It's not enabled by default. I just learned about that. And so
Really hard to do in automation heavy shops.
yes, exactly. That lack of session revocation means that cookie's going to be valid, right? And that lapse, that no absolute timeout means an attacker could be in there for nearly ever, right? As long as that the cookie's valid. So, I do want to call out that in InfoSec, we like to blow smoke here, right? And say, well, there is that race condition. So that's my only thing is you do have like an hour before that idle timeout to steal the cookie. So there is some difficulty to do this. So it's not the end of the world, but there definitely is a lot of room for improvement here as well.
Kind of almost waiting for more offensive tools to actually incorporate that and start we're going to ping all of the sessions that we currently have active every 10 minutes.
Yes.
Try and keep those keep those open.
Right. Exactly. I'm surprised that isn't already incorporated in.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll talk about logging now. So, every vendor I talk to gives me that perfect world state, right? Yeah, I'm sure you're logging everything. I'm sure you're logging all your SaaSes. I'm sure you're doing this, right? And I've never seen anyone log all of their SaaSes. It's just nearly impossible. Every SIM team I've worked with is overworked, right? And just doing their best trying to onboard what they can. Now, as more things are moving to the cloud, though, too, I have a lot of people coming to me saying, hey, we need to reduce our logs to cloud. Why are we sending all of these systems, right? So in a resource shortage world, in a cloud expensive world, right, you have hundreds. My last job had over 500 SaaS sites that they were using, right? So you really got to kind of look at it and say, well, what are the ones that are important? Where do I really need to have logs and do forensics? So that threat modeling comes really into play here of understanding what are those systems that are important, which ones should we focus getting logs on. I've implemented like a kind of a 3-tier system of tier 1 are the ones, yeah, absolutely need these. Tier 2, maybe just the security logs or maybe some of these. Tier 3, we'll contact if we need something. I recommend doing some dry runs, right? Some tabletop exercises, call them up, say, hey, I need these logs, see how long they take. I've been in, IR situations where it's been past 72 hours and you're just like, this is ridiculous. We have an ongoing incident. We know we need to know what they did and you're just not getting that info. All right, we're moving on to the next section. All right, and now we'll talk about some mitigations and controls. So this session's fun. We talk about a lot of, new things that are coming. So we start off with our IDP, right? Our SSO solution, most popular Okta, Ping, or Entra ID, right? These solutions definitely like to tout, whatever, that they are an all-in-one solution. Hey, this is everything you need, right? And we quickly find out that that's not the case. There are very few scenarios, though, if you use if everything lines up, it is a good solution. If you're using this, if you enable Okta Verify, if you enable Universal Logout, you use our ITRP, right? But it just becomes so many requirements to get into that window. And then if you use one other setting, you're, again, misaligned. So some recommendations, right? Of course, you could be doing pushes. You could be enforcing MFA with Authenticator, right? You may be using a passwordless solution, either with Okta or like Hyper or something, or you could be using YubiKey, which is one of the better mitigations to a lot of these attacks. So you ask these questions of yourself, right? Do my users need access from external? Are they only accessing from internal systems? Or do I have a mix, right? This is going to help you kind of define what that architecture should look like. Do they need to be accessed off network, right? What about my break glass situations? Do I have an always-on VPN solution that I could route them through, or am I using a SASE solution? So what's really interesting about some of like the SASE solutions, in the cases that we talked about where we're not getting logging, you're not even seeing access because it's going off network, right? But if you're routing it through like a SASE solution or an always-on VPN, at least you're getting the visibility in your firewall logs, and you can go say, oh, now I know on this date this user went because the firewall told me, where you may not have any other logs if it's purely SaaS and you have don't have an always-on VPN. So we're seeing some combination solutions. I think Microsoft has like a really good solution where they recommend using Entra ID and then their CASB, as well as a SASE solution, and you're kind of getting the best world of this of, okay, I'm getting the IDP, I'm getting some CASB protection, and then I'm also routing that traffic to where if I don't have integration and visibility, at least I can see it. So, and then when you're looking at those applications, what are the applications with high users or high target value, right? High users, like every user in the company uses this versus, oh, there's 5 users and using Jamf, right? Do I really need, what's the likelihood an attacker is going to target those 5 users? And they're also in IT, so they're probably a little book smart when it comes to security, let's hope. So And then what applications contain sensitive data, and do you tokenize it or not? We've seen a lot of investment in protecting applications that have tokenized data, and I just scratch my head and say, well, I would much rather focus on the ones that don't. But nobody asked those questions, right? And we ended up with, oh, we just knew it had data, so we invested our time there. The enhanced protections that we're seeing from the IDPs, they definitely have something called phishing protection that they keep trying to sell. They claim it has this trust between like authenticator and user identity. Again, with Okta, I think they require Okta Verify with this, right? Which only works with like 9 apps. They probably have more since Octane, but their conference a couple weeks ago. But user behavioral is a really cool tool to use in this scenario. On the next slide, I think we talk about a new term, ITDR, right, for identity. And what we're seeing here is definitely up and coming. We're seeing the application work with the IDP, but then also working with the application and getting the log somehow, either through an API or an integration, right? And they're able to say, oh, well, Shawn logged in here and his IP changed over here. Well, let's revoke his session now and do that. Some of these are your IDP solutions, but you'll see other solutions are coming up that are third parties that are able to do this. These are some of the examples of some of the things that they can detect. It's pretty cool tech to kind of see this work in action. Supposedly, they can detect things like passive cookie attacks and things of this nature, but I haven't seen a lot of success with them yet. I just haven't seen a lot of demos of them yet. In the cases like Okta that I mentioned, where I have, it is a very, hey, you have to use one of these 9 apps, and I'm like, I don't use any of those, so. Thanks for playing. So back to the application protections, right? These are all important. These are things that you should be asking your SaaS vendors or testing yourself, right? And pushing them, just like I'm constantly pushing CrowdStrike, right? Of, hey, why can't I modify my timeout? Why can't I set an idle or absolute timeout, right? Why aren't you revoking your sessions like you should? Can I enforce IP restrictions, right? Why aren't you doing simultaneous session logins? What can you do about system integrity, right? The biggest problem what we all have with these, with 500 plus SaaS apps, depending on your company, right? How are you going to centrally manage all these? And that's the biggest pain, is you're having to manage these individually, one by one, and it is a nightmare. And CASB promised years ago. Where are you, CASB? If anyone's from Palo, they're probably crying.
Wait, there is animation.
Alrighty, we're gonna hand things over to Danny for some demo time.
So if any of you have ever played in any of this very basically, this is going to be boring. It's very, very intro level, kind of how some of these tools and this process works.
And I think, you know, the point that I wanted to come across by doing the demos was also just showing how easy they are for you to set up. For instance, for Evil Jinx, right? I think it took us, we did our demos on our own to test it out, under an hour for each. And I was like, that was a great investment of time. I learned so much by going through that process of how an attacker would do it, how they register certs, right? How that's all incorporated into the tool. So.
Yeah, totally. So I'm starting out. I have this really, really basic, one of the best domains that I own, hackerpirate.ninja, with some yay fun AI generated stuff. But essentially, I'm going to show you that, no, we're not going to be authenticated to it. Hey, try and log in. Doesn't necessarily work. So then we're going to come over to this guy. So then we're going there. Let me try and blow that up for you. I don't know what. There we go. Cool. So then we're going to sudo build evil and next, a fishlet, Pirate Ninja. No, not give it the directory, not the actual file. So I have this fishlet already enabled. Again, it took I had 10, 15 minutes to configure it and just try and get all the values into it. I'm not going to go necessarily into how to do that. But essentially it's launch it. We already see that it's enabled and it's visible. And then we have a host name. So I'm going to lures, get URL 0. And so then it's going to give us this copy link. So you can kind of see pointing to HPN hackerpirateninja.malicious.hacker, which is again, another one of my absolute favorite domains of the number of them that I own. You hit that and it's going to proxy to that same WordPress login page. We're going to see detection authorization, intercepted WP login, blah, 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 all that good stuff. So we're going to authenticate to it. We're getting into WordPress, like, change your password. It's garbage. Weird. So you can see, like, you hit it and it is the actual same Hacker Pirate site. We're all in there. But then we run over to here, username, Danny Hunter 2. And you're like, cool. All right, great. So then what can we do there? Sessions. Oh, look, I did this already before. I didn't clear that out. Cool. So here, it just drops out all of the cookies. You essentially just copy them. And then from my Kali, my attacker box, we're going to essentially pirate.ninja. Again, we're going to run to WP admin. Again, we're not authenticated, but we have the cookie editor thing in there so we can kind of see the cookies that are currently existing, values, kind of thing like that. So Shawn and I kind of debated before this. I like to just delete everything out. He just dumps them all in. But then you hit import and it just takes that JSON snippet out of Evil Engine X. You hit import. You hit WP admin again and voila! We didn't authenticate on a totally different system. Now, I am coming from the same IP and everything and all that, but that's irregardless. It's just pretty much to show like how easy it is to steal those things with the tooling that we have, which is offensive tooling's gotten so good.
Yeah, and there's so many fishlets that are already created. You just literally go to the GitHub site, and there's hundreds of them out there that people have posted on, so you don't even have to create your own.
Yeah, right. So super kind of neat. I think that was it.
Yeah.
You want me to show anything else? I don't remember.
Sure.
Yeah. To who? Torvalds? No. Okay.
Last just
yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, everybody gets hit by this, like, is super prevalent. So I'm not surprised that anyone with like any kind of, yep. No. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Lots of people, just kind of reiterate for everybody in the back, just lots of high profile individuals get hit by this kind of thing. A couple of years ago, I follow automotive YouTube, and all of the big automotive YouTube pages got hit by this, and people were taking their channels and deleting the videos, all that. And they're like, we're not IT guys. And I'm like, I know exactly what happens there.
and one of the things that, I like to reiterate is on the phishing kits, you log in and credentials and you're like, oh, it didn't work. The page is broken. Like, I just lost my credentials. And you kind of have that moment of dread where like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. But when you're using a tool like this, it's proxying everything. So it looks, if
It doesn't look. It is the actual site.
It is the actual site.
I can go make posts to it, all coming from that malicious domain.
Right.
Full functionality exists.
And we all know how, the typo squatting works, right? How easy it is sometimes to miss that. But the big thing is you expect it not to work. So when it does work, you're like, oh, everything must be fine.
Yeah. You just have to notice, oh, well, it's a different domain and I didn't get any TLS errors.
Right.
All of that kind of stuff. But with Evil Engine X, like they've solved all that for everybody. Like you tell it, like you're in your fish kit, in your config, and you go, these are the domains that you're going to point people to. And it goes and registers all those TLS certs for you and just automatically uses it. Like there is almost zero effort from technologically from using it.
Yeah. Any other questions? We'll try to see people. Pretty right up here.
Yes. Have you played with, the question is, have you played with Google and gotten past their reCAPTCHA stuff?
No, I stayed away from any of the ones that had like heavy traffic, because I was just like, well, they obviously are fighting this battle with Google, and there were Microsoft was one that they just seem to be constantly fighting this. So, I initially was kind of targeting my higher value systems, right? Of what do I need to protect in my company? And we have a lot of extra protections on Google just for that reason, for MFA and things to avoid this. So I didn't spend much time playing with it.
A lot of those big platform vendors kind of stuff are doing a lot of work to try and detect all this stuff. I know in trying to set up this stuff, I was like, let me screw around with my LinkedIn profile. That was a bad idea. They're really good at detecting that. And
It worked for me though.
Yeah. How long ago? And so every single time I tried to hit my LinkedIn profile through Evil Engine X, I had to receive an SMS MFA. I had to click in the link in the email. It just kept going, and it required me to change my password every single time. And I was like, and I even said I said, wow, okay. I haven't tried LinkedIn on this stuff before, but damn, good job.
Yeah. Any other questions?
It's hard to see hands. Can't see anything up here. No?
All righty.
Cool. Well, thank you all.
Thank you.